Well, I think my topic is some brief introduction about the architectural principle in new period. We know that China is rising very rapidly over the past 3 decades, and China is the largest place for construction. But in the future, China will continue to be the largest construction site. We'll hear how we are going to do the development. After the 3 decades of rapid growth, we have already achieved a lot of results, which can be seen by the whole world. While we achieved a lot of progresses, but at the same time, we still have to make some adjustment and also make some correction and take up more challenges at this critical stage. Well, for Chinese government, and we have also seen some new policies and principles in this new age. So here I would also like to give you some introduction and some of our observations. So what is our policies or principle? We're talking about policy or principle. It means that it is a guideline for our future, and this is also the basic direction and the request.
So there have been some changes and new principles were proposed. Now here's my agenda. I'll begin with some introduction, and then I'm going to talk about how the new architectural principles are different from the old ones, and how the old principles were proposed and the value, and why we're seeing a new set of principles now. And finally, I will conclude with some practice and thinking regarding how to deliver on these new principles. Let me start with a bit of a background. On 20th December 2015, which is 37 years later, we have seen another Central Urban Work Conference where President Xi and Premier Li deliver important speeches, and after the conference, there was a guiding principle, guiding policy document regarding the guideline to promote the management of urban planning construction by the State Council. This policy document is taking a national level to review the urban developments. I believe this conference nowadays is really right into that context. At this meeting, the architectural creation was emphasized again, and proposing a new set of principles for architecturals, and also regarding how to develop architects for the new area. And this new team of new architects are the underpinning forces to deliver on these principles. As I mentioned, to this day, architecture industry are now seeing a critical moment in history of transforming itself. So in this new set of principles, what are they? So these are the ones in red. In the new area, architectural principles will be applicable, economical, green, and aesthetic. To deliver on these principles, we need to have a team of architects with international outlook and also national self-confidence. So now, with the proposal of the new architectural principles, a range of questions were raised. How are these new set of principles different from the old ones? Why do we see a new set of principles being proposed? How do we interpret these new principles, and how do we deliver on these principles? Let me touch upon how is it different from the old ones. I think there are 3 differences. First of all, there's a different context and different framework. And thirdly, there's a different particular details and with more expanded contents. In the past, the principles was applicable, economical, aesthetic if possible. Well, that was proposed in the 1950s. After the establishment of the PRC. Now, to this day, we're seeing a new set of principles. The new principles are applicable, economical, green, and aesthetic. The green ones indicate how they are different. You see, green is being proposed for the first time, and in the old principle, it was aesthetic if possible, but now it's only aesthetics. But there's a profound meaning and implications to that. First of all, we are looking at the principles in a whole different context. Principles are the direction and guidance for this industry. Therefore, any principle has to be considered into a historical context. The old set of principles has been enforced for several decades. Now, definitely, the new principles are in a new context. Now, from the 1950s to 2015, there was a tremendous change of the historical context. So it is important to understand the context. Secondly, we are looking at a whole set of different framework. Applicable is really capturing the nature of building and points to the survival logic and security. Economical is about the ethics of architecture. Greenness is about our responsibility to humanity, to nature, to society, to culture, and the history. It is really reflecting the new era. With this new principle, it's really putting the architectural responsibility into the framework. Being green means being responsible. Aesthetic is all about capturing the spiritual attributes of architecture as a cultural carrier. As we're also seeing extended contents, while we continue to see applicable and economical within the principles with time progresses, along with the development of economy, rising living standards, we are actually bestowing new contents to applicable and economical, even though they are the same words, but they are being given a new implications. I'm going to talk about that later. The new edition of green is really a necessary choice of history. It's a very distinctive contemporary style. And we see, we used to say aesthetic if possible, but now there's no if possible. This is really liberated the spiritual attribute of architecture. So we're looking at a higher level of spiritual requirements. So for those of you not from China, you probably don't know the old principles that well. At that time in 1950, China was in a very difficult economic situation. So at that time, we wanted to be aesthetical, but we only wanted aesthetic if possible, given limited resources. So with all these architecturals in the past, they are manifestation of the old principles, but now it's different. Now we just talk about how the old principles were proposed and its value. At that time, in the 1950s, right after the establishment of PRC, it's really in the context of that historical period. It is really to meet the needs of the country, needs of the people, meeting the basic requirements of a building. Being economical is really about aligning to the affordabilities and the financial means of the country, maximizing the utilization of resources to meet more demands. At that time, GDP per capita of China was very low. At that time, our income per capita is only in a matter of a few dollars, but now we are looking at $10,000. So at that time, Chinese economy was subject to a lot of embargoes. So given that difficulties, we still have to create aesthetic buildings as much as possible. So with exception of few architectures, the aesthetic of a building should not violate the principle of being applicable and economical. So in an old principle, the focus is really in the first two, being applicable and economical, but aesthetic is more like an additional attribute to be considered whenever it's possible. And if you do not have all the means, aesthetic is not part of the picture. At that time, it's really reflecting the time and the period of the 1950s onwards. Even so, at that time, we also seen a number of remarkable architecture projects. As you see, I've placed some pictures. This is the top 10 buildings at the 10th anniversary of PRC in 1959. Those are the top 10. There is the People's Congress, National Museum, Peking Rail Station. You see, these architectural are significant landmarks. If you don't see the People's Congress, you do see the monument, you don't see the National Museum and the Tiananmen Square, nobody will agree to this kind of design, because this is really part of history, part of the landscape. So those are really remarkable successes and landmarks. In the 1980s, after reform and opening up, these are the top 10 buildings in Peking in 1980s. In my personal opinion, this is not as good as the top 10 in 1959. But still, this is after a few decades. We're starting to see some new buildings, but that time it's really reflecting the 1950s, 1980s. So these are the top 10 1990s. To this day, I would say China has been reformed for a few decades, and all the best architects have come to China to deliver their practices and new concepts and new projects. We see China has been very inclusive, and we have been very inclusive to all the designs in the world. We are really making contribution to the world's architectural developments. And to this new area, we are seeing some new challenges. So while we see a high level of diversity, but also we see a lot of chaotic architectural practices. So we really need to have a new set of principles to guide this new industry's development. The chaos really reflects the lack of principle. So what is the direction, how architecture should be developed in China? Now, given such a context, at the end of last year, in December, the Urban Work Conference has proposed a new set of architectural principles. First of all, let me comment on the chaos and the diversity. Now, since reform and opening up, China is shifting from planned economy to market economy. So we are seeing number one in architectural construction. We are seeing like 2 to 3 billion construction volume every year. It might be amazing to you. The construction volume for China in a year is more than a few years' worth in European countries. So China has become the world's construction site. We're seeing a great diversity of creations with many great designs, but also controversial designs. As mentioned, those architectural designs should be, like Professor He was saying, are they just a seafood palette of different styles mixed together with irrelevant connotations? So let's take a look at this. These are the top the 3 buildings in Shanghai, Bird's Nest in Peking, the National Theater, and the Olympic Games buildings. Those are quite attractive buildings, so to speak. Basically, these are designed by foreign architects. Our appreciation to the foreign architects for making this happen in China, but we have to think about it. Do we need to have some of the Chinese elements, Chinese inheritance in this design? When we talk to academician He, we're saying we have 2 extremes. First of all, we have the extreme of homogeneity. In South China versus North China, we have whole different climates, culture, but all the cities look alike. There's one extreme, the same face to 1,000 cities. To the other extreme, we're looking at extreme individualism, extreme, special designs. So this is CCTV Tower. Aesthetics speaking, I don't comment on aesthetics because this is really a personal opinion. But if you look at the new architectural principles in China, then we have to think about it. For some period of time in China, given this new set of principles, we don't suppose to see this kind of design again, like the CCTV Tower, even though it's a award-winning project. So let's not talk about the architectural creation. Let's talk about whether it's applicable, economical, and green. If it's held to the new architectural principles, then CCTV Tower in China will not be going ahead in the future. So this is a case important where we present to all of you here. In China, if you ever want to create a project again, it should be conducted with the new principles in mind. If you look at the pictures on the right, these are the interior designs. This architectural marvel is really a great engineering prowess of structural engineering. This is great, but it's not applicable. So many architectural constructions inside, pretty depressing and not very useful in spacing. And let's not talk about whether it's good feng shui or not. It's just not comfortable. It's just not very pragmatic, and it's extremely expensive to build. Are we going to do this again? If you put it under the light of the new principle, you will have your answer. This is a very controversial. Those of you in the industry, you know about these architectural projects. Well, this is the topic of the whole population of China. So it is a marvel how how important, how high profile it is. But if it's held to the bar of the new architectural principles, it's not that great. And then some of the tacky designs, and many people use these as examples. So am I. This is a typical Chinese traditional culture, but is it really appropriate? Now, these three gods represent the god of money, the god of fortune, the god of welfare. Are we going to worship these gods? Because there is a needs proposed by developers, then would architects submit to the owner's wishes and wants whenever they ask for something like that? So this is exactly another case in point. So why are we seeing this kind of a chaos? I think that behind all this chaos is really a controversial social values. What values should we adhere to? Are we going to do architecture by market economy? Will the form factor, the format of architecture becomes the packaging and marketing tool? These developers and even local governments looking for eye-catching designs just to be a marketing gimmick, not to focus on the cultural context. I haven't been giving you the most blatant examples. Actually, I have more examples that points to these so-called landmarks. Do we really want to have a landmark that stands out? Do we want to have an architectural design that really pursues materialism? So all this really have an impact on some architects. They were guided to follow the needs of the market. They give what the owners want. So creation is really moving into overemphasis of the appearance or the forms, rather neglecting the nature of architecture as well as the pragmatic application. I think in China, the architectural industry has been really responding to this phenomenon back in year 2000. We have a great debate about how architecture should be conducted. Therefore, in year 2000, the Society of Chinese Architects have initiated an academic discussion. I think we are obligated to come up with good designs for the Chinese architectures. However, back in those days, due to its historic context at the time, still we were overwhelmed. Not many people really listened to our word of caution. There's still too many construction projects going on. But starting from last year, with the new administration, the new central government administration has taken note of the importance of proposing a new set of principles. So I'm going to talk about how are we going to practice and deliver on these new principles. Let's talk about these new 4 elements. All these 4 elements are equally important, and they are in unity. We have to capture all or none. The 4 elements are progressive. The previous ones are the foundation of the later ones. The sequence are not changeable. First of all, we start with applicable. Economical development, rising living standards, we're really requiring more architectural functionalities and usabilities. While we are meeting the needs of architectural use, the sustainability, we have to meet the functional needs, psychological needs, physiological needs, and comfort needs of humankind. And also we have to answer to the needs of users responding to nature in harmony. We don't have time to give you more details. Applicable is completely a different concept with those in an old principles. Secondly, economical. In economic difficulties, we want to build more houses with less investment, but now Chinese economy is second largest in the world. We shouldn't focus on economical value of construction price. We should look at the long-term cost, long-term use cost, as also lifespan of architecture. We also have to focus on social benefits like the environmental and health, as well as the contribution to the life quality, especially on the environmental footprint. greenness. This is a new element, the most important element. This is really responding to the requirement of the new era. We have to respect nature, protecting the nature, make use of natural resources for energy conservation, reducing the energy consumption, and also make use of green technology to meet the coordinated requirements of a human construction environment, and also we should be responsible for humankind, for environment, for the society. I think in China, in traditional philosophy, we talk about more ethics, less weird, more natural, less artificial, more rational, less pompous, more thrifty, less luxury, more responsibility, and less pursuit of fame and glory.
So I will not read all of them. And then, aesthetic. Well, this is actually the beauty of cohesion, harmony, and humanity. So actually, we have to bear the test of time. Well, that is the definition of aesthetic appreciation. And we have to cultivate the architects, that of international outlook and national self-confidence. And this is also mentioned by the white paper by the central government. Well, you can see that this is the masterpiece by Professor He. So you can see this is the China Pavilion. And I think his presentation will be better. So this is some of my understanding. If I'm wrong, Professor He, you can also correct me. That is about the Oriental crown, prosperous and China and world granary and wealthy people. So you can see the Chinese characteristics, the red dogon and the giant columns. Maybe Professor He can also interpret this later. Well, I think, yes, this is really a masterpiece. And well, after the appearance of this architecture, you can see that for Chinese hot pot and for any decoration, and they are trying to use this form. So you can see it's an impact and implication is very profound, deep into our daily life. This is another architectural work by Zhang Jingqiu. So you can see the Xueyuan Hall in Huangdi Mausoleum and focus on the local mountain landscape. And then the second one is Chang'an Pagoda. So this is the harmony and coexistence between the city and nature. Well, whether this Chinese traditional architecture by Professor He and Mr. Zhang Jingqiu, we think that we have already seen many masterpieces. Well, I believe that it is our duty to promote these Chinese tradition and also ideas to the world. This is another workpiece by Cui Kai. So you can see that on the right top, maybe you cannot see this building very clearly. So I think this is his characteristics. It is actually located in the desert. And at the top, at the bottom, you can see it looks very simple by picture. But if you are inside this building, and this is Beijing, so this is actually the light color, and you can also see the historical and the traditional context. Well, due to time limit, I can only introduce these cases. So this is the architecture by Wang Shu. It is also the first Chinese winning the Prince Prize. And also for our academy, and we have also organized an award-winning ceremony. And actually, we want to promote the Chinese award to the whole world. I hope that more foreign architects can also participate in this Chinese competition. And also, we have also been greatly supported by many architects. So you can see that the first winner is Ken Yang from Malaysia. So he is also a very famous architect for its green buildings. Well, the second winner is Zhou Kai from China. He is a very young architect. And we have already seen that it is already highly appraised by many architects across the world. I think that Chinese architects is also very great. We hope that we can have more interaction with the rest of the world. Well, we believe that this new principle provides us with more responsibility, space, and opportunity. Look forward to more discussions with all of you. Thank you.